It was one of the coldest nights of the year. Snow kept falling relentlessly, covering the sidewalks, the bus stops, and the empty streets in a thick white blanket. Street lights flickered against the icy wind, casting long, shaky shadows across the frozen pavement. Most people hurried home hours ago, trying to escape the bitter weather. But one man was still out there, walking slowly, hands buried deep in his pockets, trying to ignore the sting of the cold. His name was Marcus, a struggling warehouse worker who had just finished a double shift. His coat was old but warm, the only thing protecting him from the biting snow. He was exhausted, thinking only about getting home and resting his aching back. But as he passed the bus stop, something made him stop in his tracks. There, on the ground beside the frosted glass shelter, sat a woman, shivering uncontrollably, hugging her arms to her chest. Barefoot, and clearly terrified. Her blonde hair was tangled and wet from the snow, and her light gray suit was soaked through. She looked completely lost, like someone who had been through something terrible. Marcus blinked, unsure if what he saw was real. Then the woman lifted her face just enough for him to see the tears streaming down her cheeks. Her lips were turning blue. She couldn't even speak, she was too cold to form words. Without thinking twice, Marcus rushed toward her. Hey, are you okay?" he asked, kneeling down beside her, but she didn't answer. She just shook her head weakly, her whole body trembling. Marcus felt a sharp ache in his chest. He knew that if she stayed out here any longer, something bad could happen. He slipped off his only winter coat and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. "This will keep you warm," he said softly, tightening it around her so the wind wouldn't steal the heat away. The woman looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. For a moment, Marcus thought she might collapse into his arms. She tried to say something, anything, but her voice cracked into a quiet sob. Snowflakes clung to her hair, to her eyelashes, to her trembling hands. Marcus steadied her with one arm. "Don't worry, I'm here," he whispered. People walked by, glancing quickly, pretending not to notice. Cars passed in the distance, their headlights sweeping over the icy road. But in that moment, Marcus and the woman seemed completely alone in the freezing night. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what happened to her. He didn't know why she was out here barefoot in a snowstorm. But he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her like this. And that one decision, giving away his only coat to protect a stranger, was about to change his life in ways he never expected. Marcus kept his arm around the woman as the wind pushed another wave of icy air across the bus stop. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and every few seconds her body jerked from the cold. The coat helped, but not enough. She needed to get out of the snow. "Come on," Marcus said gently. "We can't stay here. You'll freeze." The woman tried to stand, but her legs buckled almost immediately. Marcus caught her before she fell, holding her steady, up close. He noticed how pale she was, how her hands shook violently when she gripped his sleeve for balance. I, she whispered, but the words collapsed into a soft, painful gasp. It wasn't just fear, she was physically unable to speak through the cold. "It's okay," Marcus assured her. "You don't need to explain right now." Slowly, he helped her take a few steps away from the bench. The snow crunched under their feet, and her bare toes turned red against the frozen ground. Each step looked like it hurt. Marcus tightened his grip, guiding her carefully so she didn't slip. She glanced up at him with trembling eyes, as if trying to apologize for being a burden, but he just shook his head. "You're doing fine. I've got you," he said quietly. The street behind them was almost empty, just a long stretch of wet pavement glowing under streetlights. The storm hadn't let up, and the night felt heavier, quieter. Marcus knew she couldn't walk far like this. He needed to get her somewhere warm, fast. As they reached the edge of the sidewalk, she finally managed to form a single sentence through chattering teeth. "Please, don't leave me." Marcus felt those words hit him harder than the cold ever could. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied. "You're safe, I promise." He looked toward the direction of his parked truck. It wasn't far, just down the street, hidden behind a row of snow-covered cars. He didn't know who this woman was or what had brought her to such a desperate moment. But he knew what he had to do next. He took a breath, adjusted the coat around her shoulders again, and prepared to lead her toward safety, one careful step at a time. The snow was coming down harder by the minute as Marcus guided the woman toward his truck. She leaned heavily on him, her steps slow and uneven, her bare feet dragging against the icy ground. Even with his coat wrapped tightly around her, the cold still seeped into her bones. "There it is," Marcus said softly when the outline of his old pickup came into view under a flickering street lamp. The truck wasn't much to look at: dented doors, faded paint, and a windshield that had seen better days, but right now, it was warm, dry, and safe. He helped her to the passenger side and opened the door. A burst of warm air rushed out. He had left the heater running earlier without thinking much about it. The woman hesitated for a moment, gripping the door frame as if gathering the strength to climb in. "You're okay," Marcus reassured her. "Take your time." She managed to pull herself onto the seat, curling her legs in to avoid the cold metal step. Marcus pulled the coat tighter around her again before shutting the door gently. Then he hurried around to the driver's side and climbed in next to her. The heater hummed loudly, filling the cab with steady warmth. Slowly, her breathing began to ease, though her shoulders still shook from the leftover chill. Marcus kept his voice calm, low, not wanting to overwhelm her. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked after a moment. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling less now. Leah," she finally whispered. "That's a good start," Marcus said. "Leah, you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you here." Leah closed her eyes, as if holding on to that sentence. Then, as warmth returned to her fingers, she clutched the coat to her chest and whispered, almost too softly to hear, "They took everything." Marcus turned toward her, brows furrowing. "Who did?" Her voice cracked. I don't know, 3 men. They cornered me, took my bag, my phone, my shoes. I tried to run but..." Her breath hitched, and she shook her head, unable to finish. Marcus felt a rush of anger at the thought of anyone leaving her like this, alone in a snowstorm. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No one deserves that." Leah wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, but it didn't stop the tears. "I didn't know where to go. I just kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore." Marcus nodded slowly, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. "Well, you're not alone now. I'll help you figure this out." For the first time that night, Leah looked at him with something other than fear, something closer to hope. Once Leah's shivering eased a little, Marcus started the engine and pulled away from the curb. He didn't want to overwhelm her with questions, but he knew she needed more than just warmth. She needed help, real help. A few blocks ahead, a convenience store glowed under bright fluorescent lights, a small island of warmth in the middle of the snowy street. "We'll stop here," Marcus said gently. "You can try calling someone. Maybe a friend or family member." Leah nodded weakly. She looked exhausted, but the idea of reaching someone she trusted seemed to give her a bit of strength. Marcus parked the truck and helped her down carefully, mindful of her bare feet on the cold pavement. He guided her inside, where the heater hit them almost instantly. Leah clung to the counter for balance as Marcus asked the cashier if she could use the store phone. The cashier took one look at her, soaked hair, pale face, trembling hands, and handed the phone over without a word. Leah dialed the first number with shaky fingers. It rang. And rang. And rang. No answer. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and tried another. Still nothing. "Come on, please pick up," she whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus stood nearby, giving her space but staying close enough so she knew she wasn't alone. He watched her try again, another number. Then another. Each time, the same result, endless ringing. Then silence. Her shoulders slumped. "No one's answering," she said, barely audible. Marcus didn't know her story, but the pain in her voice told him enough. Whoever she was trying to reach, she desperately needed them. Leah wiped her eyes with trembling fingers and shook her head, as if trying to convince herself not to fall apart. "I thought someone would pick up," she said. "I thought someone would notice I was gone." The cashier looked away awkwardly, unsure of what to say. People walked in and out of the store, glancing at Leah before quickly pretending they hadn't seen anything. Marcus stepped a little closer. "Hey," he said softly. "You did what you could. It's not your fault." Leah held the phone against her chest for a moment, breathing unsteadily. "I don't know what to do now." She admitted, I can't go home like this. I can't show up looking like. She gestured weakly at her soaked clothes. Her bare feet. Her red eyes. Marcus didn't let her finish. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. Let's take things one step at a time. We'll get you somewhere warm first. Leah looked up at him, defeated but grateful. In the middle of a fluorescent lit store, surrounded by strangers who didn't want to get involved, Marcus was the only person who stayed. And right now, that made all the difference. When the last call failed, Leah slowly set the store phone back on the counter. Any hope she had of being found that night seemed to fade with it. Her shoulders curled inward, as if she were bracing for another blow. Marcus could see she was barely holding herself together. Leah, he said gently, you can't stay out here. You're freezing, you're hurt, and you have nowhere to go tonight. My place is small, but it's warm. You can rest until you figure things out. Leah hesitated. Her pride and fear collided in her expression. But the cold, and the reality, left her no choice. She nodded faintly. Just for tonight, she whispered. Marcus helped her back into the truck and drove through the quiet streets. Snow piled on rooftops, street signs, and trees, turning the whole neighborhood into a silent white maze. Leah stared out the window. Her fingers curled tightly in his coat, as if afraid someone might take it away. A few minutes later, Marcus parked outside an old brick apartment building. The stairwell lights flickered, and the hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. Leah followed him slowly, gripping the railing with unsteady hands. Marcus unlocked the door to his small unit. Watch your step, he said softly. Inside, the space was humble, worn sofa, small kitchen, a second-hand table, but it felt warm and lived in. A heater hummed in the corner, filling the room with comforting heat. Compared to the freezing chaos outside, it felt like a completely different world. Leah stepped in cautiously, almost embarrassed to be there. Thank you for not leaving me out there, she murmured. You don't have to thank me, Marcus replied. Anybody would have done the same. But they both knew that wasn't true. Marcus handed her a clean towel and a soft blanket. You can warm up here. I'll make you something hot to drink. Leah sat slowly on the edge of the sofa, pulling the blanket around herself. She closed her eyes as the warmth seeped into her skin. For the first time that night, her breathing steadied, the tension in her shoulders loosened. This is the first time I felt safe tonight, she said quietly. Marcus paused in the kitchen doorway, hearing the weight in her voice. Well, he said, you're safe now. That's what matters. Leah looked down at her bare feet, then at the borrowed blanket, then at Marcus. There was gratitude in her eyes. And something else, something fragile. Like a person realizing she wasn't completely alone after all. In his tiny living room, surrounded by second-hand furniture and the hum of the heater, a stranger's trust slowly began to grow. Morning came quietly. The night storm had finally passed, leaving the world outside covered in a thick, untouched layer of snow. Soft sunlight filtered through the small curtains in Marcus's living room, casting warm stripes of light across the floor. Marcus woke on the old armchair he had slept in, blanket half fallen to the ground. For a moment, he wondered if everything from last night had just been a strange dream, until he saw his coat, still wrapped around Leah, neatly folded on the sofa where she had slept. She sat up slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The exhaustion in her face was still there, but the terror from the night before had softened. She greeted him with a small, apologetic smile. Good morning, she said quietly. Morning, Marcus replied. How are you feeling? A little better, she said. Warmer. Thank you for all of this. Marcus nodded, then cleared his throat awkwardly. I have some clean clothes. They might be a bit big, but at least they're dry. Leah looked almost embarrassed but nodded. That would help, thank you. He handed her a simple set of clothes, a soft hoodie and sweatpants. She disappeared into the small bathroom. And for a moment, Marcus wondered again who she really was. Her speech, her posture, even the way she handled the mug he'd given her last night, none of it matched the image of someone who would normally walk alone through a dangerous neighborhood. When she came out, the oversized clothes made her look strangely younger. But something else caught his attention. Her suit, the gray one she'd worn the night before, was now draped neatly over a chair. The fabric was expensive, the stitching precise. It wasn't the kind of outfit someone wore casually. Marcus hesitated. That's some pretty fancy clothing you've got there. Leah's eyes flickered, and she seemed unsure how to answer. It's work-related, she said softly. I don't normally dress like this outside the office. He didn't push further, but questions stacked themselves quietly in his mind. She took a sip of water, then glanced toward the window as if remembering something urgent. I really need to get in touch with someone today, she said, but my phone is gone. We can figure that out, Marcus replied, one step at a time. Leah looked around the small apartment, the patched-up walls, the second-hand furniture, the chip table, and then back at Marcus. Something like guilt crossed her face. You've done so much for me, she said softly, more than you know. Marcus shrugged lightly. You needed help, that's all. But Leah shook her head. No, it's more than that. I just can't explain everything yet. Her voice carried a hint of something deeper, something Marcus couldn't place yet. But soon would. Leah sat quietly at Marcus's small kitchen table. Her fingers curled around a warm cup of tea. She stared at the steam rising from it, lost in thought, as if trying to gather pieces of herself that had scattered during the long, terrifying night. Marcus watched her from across the room, noticing details he hadn't paid attention to before, her posture, her careful tone, the way she measured every word. She didn't look like someone used to living on the edge. She looked like someone who came from a very different world than his. Before he could ask anything, a low rumble echoed from outside, an engine far too smooth, too quiet to belong in his neighborhood. Marcus frowned and walked to the window. A black luxury SUV pulled up in front of his building. It contrasted sharply with the worn-down brick walls and snow-covered cars around it. The vehicle brimmed with authority, tinted windows, polished chrome, headlights slicing through the morning frost. Marcus's stomach tightened. This wasn't normal. Inside the kitchen, Leah froze. Her eyes widened, not with relief, but with panic. No, not here, she whispered. Marcus turned to her. Leah, you know that car? She didn't answer immediately. Her breathing quickened, and she clutched her hands together as if bracing for impact. I didn't think they'd find me this fast. Marcus blinked. Find you? Leah, what's going on? Before she could respond, a firm knock echoed through the hallway. Heavy steps approached his door, measured, purposeful. Leah stood abruptly, backing away from the sound. Please, don't open it yet, she said. I need a second. Marcus had never seen anyone shift so quickly from calm to frightened. He hesitated, torn between protecting her and understanding what danger she might have brought with her. Then the knock came again, louder this time. Ms. Hale? A man's voice called out from the hallway. Ms. Hale, are you inside? We've been looking for you. Marcus turned back to Leah, stunned. Hale? She closed her eyes briefly, realizing she could no longer hide. My full name is Leah Hale. The name didn't mean anything to Marcus, until the voice outside added. Ma'am, your security team is here. Please let us confirm you're all right. Marcus's mouth fell open. Security team? Leah swallowed hard, guilt and exhaustion mixing in her expression. I wasn't completely honest with you. I wasn't just walking home last night. I work in a position where people notice when I disappear. Outside, someone knocked again, more urgently. Ms. Hale, please answer. We need to escort you back. Leah looked at Marcus, her eyes filled with apology. I'm not the person you think I am, she said softly, and this is going to change everything. The knocking grew sharper, more urgent. Marcus could feel the vibration through the thin apartment door. Leah stood frozen for a moment, her breath unsteady, as if weighing the little freedom she had found overnight against the reality waiting outside. Leah, Marcus said quietly, you should tell me what's going on. She gave him a pained look, part apology, part fear, then walked toward the door with slow, reluctant steps. When she opened it, two men in tailored black coats stood in the hallway. Their posture was rigid, their expressions focused. They weren't neighbors, and they definitely weren't police. The taller one exhaled in visible relief. Ms. Hale, thank God, we've been searching all night. The other man stepped forward carefully, lowering his voice when he noticed her bare feet and the oversized clothes. Are you injured? Do we need medical support? Leah shook her head. I'm fine. I just needed a moment away. Both men exchanged a look, half worry, half confusion, but neither questioned her in Marcus's doorway. They simply nodded, as if they were used to following her lead. Marcus stood behind Leah, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Security team, luxury SUV, formal address. This was far beyond anything he'd imagined. The taller guard finally acknowledged Marcus with a curt nod. Sir, thank you for assisting Ms. Hale. Marcus blinked. I didn't do anything special. She was freezing out there. The guard shook his head. You did more than you realize. Leah stepped aside slightly so Marcus was in view. This is Marcus, she said, her voice soft but steady. He helped me when no one else did. For a brief second, something like respect flashed in the guard's eyes. But Marcus still felt out of place, like he'd suddenly stepped into someone else's story. Someone with a life far more complicated than he'd known. The shorter guard cleared his throat. Ms. Hale, we need to get you back to headquarters. The executive team is already aware of your disappearance. Marcus stiffened. Executive team? Leah looked away, guilt tightening her expression. I didn't want any of this. She whispered. I just needed somewhere safe. And Marcus gave me that. One guard opened the door wider, gesturing toward the waiting SUV downstairs. We'll handle everything from here. Ma'am. Before leaving, Leah turned to Marcus. Her eyes held gratitude, regret, and something unspoken he couldn't name. Marcus, thank you. You showed me kindness when you owed me nothing. He managed a small, confused smile. Anyone would have helped. But Leah shook her head. No, not anyone. As the hallway lights flickered above them, Leah stepped out of the apartment, back into the world she had tried to escape the night before. And Marcus realized he still didn't know who she truly was. But he was about to find out. Marcus spent the rest of the morning trying to make sense of what had happened. The apartment felt strangely quiet without Leah's presence, and the events at his door played over and over in his mind. Security teams didn't search all night for just anyone, and people didn't address ordinary women as Ms. Hale with that level of urgency. By early afternoon, a knock came again, this time gentler. When Marcus opened the door, he found one of the security guards standing there with a composed, almost formal expression. Mr. Marcus, the guard said, Ms. Hale has requested to see you. She asked that we escort you to her office. Her office? Marcus repeated. Yes, sir. She said you deserve answers. Marcus hesitated, but deep down he knew he wanted those answers. He locked his apartment and followed the guard outside. The same black SUV waited at the curb, spotless despite the slushy roads. As he climbed into the backseat, he felt like he was stepping into another world. The drive took them downtown, where buildings rose higher and the sidewalks grew busier. Eventually, the SUV pulled up in front of a tall glass tower, sleek, modern, and miles beyond anything Marcus had ever walked into. Inside, the lobby looked like something out of a magazine. Polished marble floors, a chandelier that glittered like ice. Receptionists in tailored uniforms who immediately stood when they saw the security escort. Ms. Hale is expecting him, the guard said simply. They were ushered into a private elevator, one that required a keycard the guard kept clipped beside his jacket. When the doors opened, Marcus found himself in a spacious executive office suite overlooking the entire city. Sunlight spilled across polished floors and expensive furniture. And there, standing near the window, was Leah. She looked different now. Her hair was neatly styled. She wore a fitted blazer, and confidence seemed to settle naturally on her shoulders. But when she turned and saw Marcus, her expression softened instantly. Marcus, I'm glad you came. He stepped inside, feeling out of place. Leah, what is this place? Who exactly are you? She took a breath, as if choosing her words carefully. I'm the chief operating officer of this company. Yesterday, I disappeared without anyone knowing where I went. That's why the security team reacted the way they did. Marcus blinked, stunned. COO? It was the last thing he'd expected. I didn't tell you because. Leah paused. Because last night, none of that mattered. I wasn't a title or a position. I was just someone terrified and alone. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how different their worlds truly were. Yet she stood in front of him with the same grateful eyes from the night before. "I asked you here," she continued, "because your kindness changed everything for me. And I don't want this to end as just a moment that happened between strangers." Marcus swallowed, unsure what that meant, but knowing everything in his life was shifting. Marcus stood in Leah's office, surrounded by polished floors and city views stretching miles beyond anything he had ever seen. But none of it felt as overwhelming as the words she had just spoken. He shifted awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Leah, I didn't do anything special," he murmured. "I just couldn't leave you out there." She stepped closer, her voice calm but full of meaning. "Marcus, dozens of people walked past me last night. They heard me crying, they saw me shaking in the snow. But no one stopped, no one even looked twice." Her eyes softened. "Except you." Marcus exhaled, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to being in rooms like this. And he definitely wasn't used to being thanked by executives and skyscrapers. Leah walked to her desk and picked up a folder. "I want to help you the way you helped me," she said, placing it gently in his hands. "Inside is an offer for a full-time position here. A stable job, with benefits and training. Something that can move you forward instead of holding you down." Marcus's eyes widened. He glanced at the folder but didn't open it yet, almost afraid the words on the paper might disappear if he looked directly. Leah, this is too much." "No," she said firmly. "It's not enough, but it's a start." He swallowed hard. All his life, opportunities came rarely, and when they did, they never stayed long. But Leah wasn't offering pity. She was offering belief, something even more powerful. "I don't know what to say," Marcus whispered. "Say you'll consider it," Leah replied, "not because you owe me anything, but because you deserve the same chance you gave me, a chance to stand back up." Marcus looked out the window. At the snow melting on the rooftops below. The city felt different now, less heavy, less impossible. He finally opened the folder. Inside, the offer was real, generous, life-changing. He let out a shaky breath. "Leah, thank you." She smiled softly. "You changed my life in one night. Let me return a small part of that." He nodded slowly, feeling something warm settle in his chest, a mix of relief, disbelief, and hope he hadn't felt in years. As he shook her hand, Leah held his a moment longer. "Remember," she said, "the world needs more people who stop when they see someone hurting. Don't ever lose that part of you." And for the first time in a long time, Marcus walked out of a building not feeling small, but feeling like his life was finally shifting towards something better. A single act of kindness on a freezing night had rewritten both their futures.